So we are now into the asset management section of the conference, and we have George Stevenson of BIM for Housing talking about the impact on the new guidance on the golden thread of information. Over to you, George.
Thank you. Yeah, so why are we doing BIM? Well, largely it's the premise is that it's about quality, cost, improving program, and improving safety. But actually, in terms of quality, 3D modeling and VR hasn't really helped this couple. And one of the things that housing associations wake up every morning is the fear that something like this could happen. And what we're now doing is going through producing safety case reviews to identify where those risks are. And yet, even if we've done fully coordinated models, we're still getting this sort of quality of workmanship that is undermining things. And even the new clerk of works, when they're appointed, they can only pick up on things that they can actually see. So one of the challenges I think we have is Dame Judith was talking about a digital record, so transforming things into digital rather than analog things that we can see and pick up through normal sensors. And really, as far as housing associations are concerned, they've typically they've left the BIM side of things to the supply chain, but now they are involved and they're looking to help them reduce their risk from a legal perspective. So what has been happening is there's a whole range of different processes and methods by which risk can be identified and probably more importantly transferred. And we've also got ways of looking at where the risks are in terms of information and putting in terms of processes to enable that, to identify what those steps are that can be put in place to change things. And also the reports that are needed to ensure that we can actually occupy the building afterwards. But really, what we're trying to do is to improve that quality of information. And what Dame Judith was talking about was actually using BIM to get to us in a situation where we've got the same sort of traceability that we've got in aerospace and automotive. And the question then is, have we really solved it by using BIM? Well, the fact is that I don't think we have. When insurers are asking contractors, have we got the necessary data to prevent the spread of fire? I'm not sure that we can answer that question. Part of the work that we've been doing over the last 2 or 3 years, we've been working with a lot of big housing developers and their consultants and designers to actually figure out what actually is needed to enable this. And part of the challenge that we're trying to attack is that BIM extensively is used up till stage 4, but then it tends to drop off a cliff because the trade contractors get involved. And in most cases, the information that they are using is not in a form that would relate back to the BIM models. And it's not a matter of just them not doing the job. A lot of the things that they are capturing information on that we need from an asset management point of view are never modeled in the first place. So door closers, for example, or toilet seats, or functional spaces and the like. So this is information that isn't being managed, or it can't easily be referenced back to or built into a family or an object in the CAD system. And the result is that we end up having to commission surveys to go and survey buildings that have just been completed to find out the information that we need, which is mad, really. So although we've got a lot of processes in place to federate geometry, what we're not doing is really capturing the data. So the client ends up with information or doesn't get the information that they need. And importantly, isn't answering the question, do I have all the fire risk information on all relevant asset types? The only way of really doing that is to be explicit in terms of asking for what information you need. So the method that we're following now is to use the asset information requirements as the driver to specify exactly what information we need, data that we need, and then to be able to audit it. So here we've got an example of one attempt at that. So we've got AIRs going out, which are quite comprehensive, but quite difficult to read and interpret. And as far as the fire is concerned, there's not a great deal of information there. It's just fire. What type of fire information do we actually need? This one's a little bit more specific, but still we're simply asking for fire rating. And what do we actually mean by fire rating? I've looked at the Building Smart Data Dictionary, and here we've got fire rating. There's 18 different references to fire rating. Which one do I use? There's 4 there that are just say fire rating. If it's a door, that's probably fairly clear in terms of the fire rating for a door, but what if it's a door set? And is that door is part of a facade? Is that any different? It's also, there's another fire rating there for a building element proxy, common, which I suspect is used quite a lot in models. Here we've got the IFC4 references, and we've got a number of different references to fire here. We've got fire rating, fire resistance rating. What's the difference? Surface spread of fire, I imagine that's quite an important one as well. If we look at a door, this is just a standard IFC door reference. We've got fire rating there. So we've been working with David Miller over the last 3 or 4 years to try and look at how we can pull this golden thread process together. And here we've got a specification. This has come from MBS Create. And you'll see here, they're not using fire rating as a reference, they're using fire integrity and fire insulation. I'm sure that there are architects and engineers on this call who would explain to me what the differences are with that, but it's not simple. And the other interesting thing with that is, although they've referenced 30 minutes there, they've now been advised that it's probably more sensible to take that 30 minutes out of the specification and just leave the reference to the British Standard. And therefore, the person that's trying to find out what the fire rating is of that door has to look at the fire strategy report and also the British Standard. So that may not be a good thing to do when you're in the middle of trying to sort something out in an emergency. So we think it's better if we can explicitly say what information we need, and that's really what the asset information requirements are about. If we can explicitly say it, then we can automatically validate and check to see if that information has been provided. We can provide product manufacturers with that information as well, so they can ensure that they're providing the data that's needed. And then as it's coming into the project model, we can then automatically generate it through into the digital O&M. It's a matter of using standardization to achieve a lot of that. So in this case, we've got a Revit model, and we've dropped into the Revit model a parameter. We're calling this the golden key. So this is the golden key to the golden thread. Basically, it's just a reference which then can go out to a schedule. And having that schedule, it means that we can generate, here's a COBie data set, and here we can then see that reference back to the object and also the product that is satisfying it. By neutralizing that, not putting the manufacturer's information into the model, when that product might get swapped because of an issue during warranty period or in due course during the life of the job, it can get swapped as well. It also, you can then reference it back to the fire strategy. So when type A becomes a type G because it's a fire door, or a type F because it's a mechanically controlled door, you're not having changed things in the model. You're simply referencing it to the right type of product. And the manufacturer's information can then be kept up to date by the manufacturer. But we're not saying that that should be as a document. It might be as a document, but we need the key data to be held digitally. So the overall impact of that is that we've got the AIR is going into the specification tool, connected to the objects in the models. And importantly, we're trying to tie this into procurement. So we're bringing procurement into the BIM process so that we can automatically capture the information as it's needed. And then we can then grow that information through the overall process. Also change management. So if we start at the beginning by tying the requirement to a product that can satisfy that requirement, we then feed that into the design process, and we can then feed that into procurement and the technical submittal process. And that then can go into delivery, installation and commissioning. So it's tying it in and adding value to the way the subcontractors need to work. So what we're doing really is doing the same with the data that we've been doing for years with the geometry. We're bringing together the data files into a federated database and also providing trade contractors with simple tools to update their information as it becomes available. So we end up with a federated asset data set that automatically ties to the model. And therefore, once we've got all of that coordinated with the geometry and also the locations of items, we can then feed that out into whichever planned and preventative maintenance system is being used. But also, we can also have APIs into the various other data sets that are being used as well. So the idea is to create a complete network of data services. So where are we now? Well, part of the issue really is to make sure that we've got standardized libraries and standardized data sets. And there's a lot of work going on to by authorities to author the information so that we're all working and singing off the same hymn sheets. So as far as the clients are concerned, what we're doing is providing a means by which they can hold that information in standard data templates and library items which they can either have as private or community libraries, which then are used on projects. So when they're then used on projects, they'll get glued together and can supply the information out to whichever systems are being used. So here we've got an example of with the housing associations. They're collaborating at the moment to create a set of asset information requirements that can be published as a set of, and in this case, that Word document also, if we look over on the right-hand side there, you'll see that we've got the IFC definitions for smoke and fire exit and fire ratings. And how do we then capture that information? Well, if that's been specified, we can then feed that out into spreadsheets or online forms into a database so that the trade contractors know exactly what information they've got to provide. These are IFC configured data templates. So that information can then be captured in a form that makes it easy for them to work with. Or they can be pre-populated if we know what products have been used, and the product library information can come through from the manufacturer. Much of the information can be populated automatically. So where are we going with this now? Well, as far as the housing associations are concerned, what they're being asked for is to demonstrate that they're building safe. Now, what does that mean? Well, first of all, you've got to make sure that you've got reliable asset data. You need to know where all the fire stopping is. You need to know that the fire dampers have been serviced recently and that they will act in the right way to contain any fire. But we also then need to probably run simulations to be able to run scenarios to see whether people can get out, and use machine learning to then support that. So these are some experiments that we've been doing with Graph to enable us to look at the interrelationships between spaces and the items that are protecting them. Here's another one where the libraries are being used to support the FMA initiative that's an Innovate UK project. So again, all of the information is being digitized and then there's going to be the means by which a client can go on and order a building. They're able to go on and configure a building and then order it for assembly on site. And that can then be both assembled and disassembled in years to come in the most sustainable way. So overall, I think it's about collaboration to be able to take libraries from major clients and also then create community libraries that everybody can share, and then use those on projects so everybody's singing off the same hymn sheet. And finally, this is the way we're taking BIM for Housing. We're creating virtual working groups around a number of different topic areas, and we've got a team of lead team on each of those now. This is just starting, but the principle is that we're going to identify problems that we're trying to solve, identify what the impact of those problems are, so that we can use that to prioritize which problems we're going to address. And then there's going to be work streams. We're going to invite people to join with us to actually try and address that and arrive at solutions that we can then work with going forward. And that's me.
Great, thank you very much for that, George.